What does it take to out-pro the MacBook Pro? Is it just bigger and better hardware, a better creator experience, or superior gaming prowess? The Galaxy Book 4 Ultra is Samsung's tip-top Windows laptop with just about the best PC hardware you're gonna find inside a computer you can still classify as more or less portable. I've been using it for the past month or so for pretty much anything I do involving a computer, whether it's work or play, and having come from using a 16-inch MacBook Pro as my main device for a couple of years now, I've got some thoughts, so let's get into it. First off, this is a big, beastly machine. Its footprint is ever so slightly larger than the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and it's also heavier, though the tapered base does make it seem slightly less chunky in terms of overall thickness. This device still very much classes as a portable pro workstation and isn't nearly as ridiculous as some full-on desktop replacement laptops with full desktop components, but it's big, it's chunky, it's going to feel heavy in a messenger bag or laptop bag the same way that Apple's largest computers do. Like its two-in-one counterpart, the Galaxy Book 4 Pro 360 though, the overall design is pretty generic and I would even say a bit boring. Not a whole lot of anything going on the outside besides the Samsung branding, just brushed aluminium in a mid-grey colorway. And on the underside, ample intake vents both centrally and on the side here to cool the beefy PC hardware lurking within. The two standout items on the spec sheet here are firstly Intel's top-tier notebook processor, the Core Ultra 9 185H, and Nvidia's GeForce RTX 4070 laptop GPU. It's that duo that makes this such a powerful machine for both gaming and content creation, and it's backed up by an ample 32 gigs of RAM and, in the sample I'm using, a terabyte of storage. Now for the price of just over £3,100 in the UK, that's a little on the stingy side, so it's a good thing that at the time we're making this video, you can bump up to 2 terabytes for free, provided you buy it on Samsung.com. A terabyte isn't a small amount of storage, but if you're using this machine for what it's designed for, video work, graphics work, and let's face it, given the size of games these days, even gaming, you're very quickly going to be thinking about adding external storage. With 2 terabytes, that's a whole lot more breathing room. Ports are also a little on the anemic side. On the left edge, you've got dual Thunderbolt 4 plus full-sized HDMI. On the right, USB-A, microSD, and 3.5mm headphone. And my beef here really has to do with the number of Thunderbolt connectors for what's supposed to be a pro machine. Apple gives you a third Thunderbolt port on that right edge as well as full-sized SD, which is going to be a lot more useful to a lot of folks. Not exactly a huge thing, but in my opinion, definitely a thing. Creators might want to plug in both an external monitor and external drives and still need a port for you to charge this thing. Do 2 of those 3 things over USB-C and suddenly you're already out of ports. Anyway, opening it up, you've once again got a layout that's more or less identical to the other large form factor Galaxy Books, complete with fingerprint scanner built into the power button for Windows Hello. The keyboard and trackpad is shifted over to the left to accommodate the full-size numpad. That means your muscle memory may need some time to adjust to typing on this thing, but hey, depending on your workflow, that numpad may actually come in useful. And key feel and travel is nice and firm, being just a little shallower than what I'm used to with the MacBook Pro. The trackpad placement though can be more problematic, and this is mainly a gaming thing. If you're resting your palm here while using the W, A, S, and D keys, it's easy to pick up errant accidental touches on the trackpad that wouldn't necessarily be the case if it was centrally aligned as normal. But at least the trackpad is nice and large, serving as a decent companion alongside touch input on that gorgeous Super AMOLED 2X display. This is a fantastic looking screen that's a great match for a machine boasting as much graphical horsepower as this. It's a 3K panel, so 2880 by 1800 resolution, and with a 120Hz refresh rate that ensures everything feels super snappy, while also opening up the possibility of higher visible frame rates while gaming. Whatever you're viewing on here is gonna look phenomenal, complemented by the pitch blacks and punchy colors that you'd expect from a modern OLED. Just as important is the display coating. Similar to the Galaxy S24 Ultra smartphone, the Corning Gorilla Glass with DX does an amazing job of cancelling out reflections much better than other glossy OLED screens in cheaper models. Audio-wise, the built-in AKG speakers aren't bad, but you'll definitely notice less bassy output compared to the MacBook Pro, and even less weighty laptop models like Huawei's MateBook X Pro.
All phones are on the latest public software available for each device, so no betas, no custom ROMs, no forced side-loaded software here. These cameras are as good as Google has tuned them to be.
Output at higher volume levels is just a bit scratchier than some of the high-end competition. Not super disappointing, but for the most immersive sound you'll want to use external speakers or headphones while gaming, for instance. With a laptop like this though, it's all about the performance, and the Core Ultra 9 under the hood here definitely did not disappoint, especially backed up by 32 gigs of RAM for impressive multitasking capabilities. If I'm juggling Photoshop or Premiere Pro at the same time, for example, I don't need to worry about one of the two being starved of memory. The large cooling apparatus inside, combined with the Core Ultra 9, one of the more efficient x86 chips, means that most of the time this machine is fairly quiet, only really ramping up in terms of fan speed when you push it in more graphically intensive workflows. It doesn't quite match the complete silence you'll often get from a Mac running Apple Silicon, but I did notice much less overall noise compared to similar Core Ultras packed into a smaller chassis. The most demanding work I put the Galaxy Book 4 Ultra up against was editing 4K timelines in Adobe Premiere Pro with H.265 source footage ranging from 4K 30 to 6K at 60 FPS. And my main takeaway here using this thing for video editing was that you can feel there's definitely more CPU and GPU horsepower there to tap into versus my 2-year-old MacBook Pro, but at the same time turning on those taps results in noticeably more fan noise, heat and power consumption. With Apple Silicon, the only time I'd really get the fans kicking in to a noticeable extent was during the final export process. With the Galaxy Book 4 Ultra, it became more part and parcel of the everyday experience of editing on it, even though I could feel I was editing on a more powerful machine. The occasional performance hiccups I experienced on an M1 Pro with 6K footage, for example, just weren't an issue thanks to the Nvidia GPU, but then you've got to deal with the fans running at full blast and dumping that extra heat out into wherever you're working. And of course, editing on battery is where you really start to see the disadvantage of all this power-hungry PC hardware. Apple Silicon is still the only hardware I've used where I can really legitimately get multiple hours of full, complex 4K editing without experiencing any battery anxiety. In the PC world with Core Ultra and an RTX 4070, again, you've got more power to tap into, but turning on those taps means your battery levels can very quickly nosedive. So in terms of battery life overall, it's really going to depend on how much hardcore 3D gaming or video editing work you're doing. The 76 watt-hour battery is definitely nothing to sniff at, and for lighter workloads, even in extensive use of apps like Photoshop, it's enough to comfortably see you through a full working day of 10 or so hours. But start to bring in Premiere Pro or intense gaming and you'll very quickly start to chew through that available capacity, even if the drop-off isn't quite as precipitous as other PCs with discrete graphics. On a related note, there is a fair amount of performance throttling going on battery, which is something I didn't notice to a massive degree in my video editing, but did see reflected quite heavily in gaming, sometimes to a remarkable extent. Doom Eternal, for instance, at 1080p on ultra settings, went from over 100 FPS in places to under 40, going from AC power to battery. What was pretty neat to see though is that apps like Premiere could indeed tap into both the power of the RTX 4070 dedicated graphics hardware and the Intel Arc GPU with the Core Ultra at the same time. For example, when exporting footage, the Arc would be used for decoding footage, while the 4070 would be used for the heavy lifting in terms of 3D and encoding. Not a huge deal, but nice to see that the integrated GPU isn't just sitting totally idle when an app is using discrete graphics. Gaming-wise, obviously your mileage is going to depend quite heavily on whether you're plugged in or not, so for the purposes of the rest of this review, I'm just going to assume that you are. Obviously, the laptop version of the RTX 4070 here isn't anywhere near equivalent to a desktop 4070, but it's still a fantastic GPU for moderate to intense gaming on this machine. A lot of titles that are a few years old now, like the aforementioned Doom Eternal and others like Gears 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2, will run maxed out at between 1080p and the native resolution, especially if you want to experiment with the frame rate enhancing goodness of DLSS to boost your numbers. Even indulging in a little ray tracing isn't entirely out of the question depending on your title of choice. Doom was once again a surprisingly decent performer at 1080p with ray tracing on, other titles less so. Though once again you'd be advised to plug in and expect to eat an appropriately large performance hit. Being a Galaxy notebook, of course, this machine is a great accompaniment to the Galaxy phone or tablet that you may also own. Second Screen, for example, does exactly what you might expect by roping in a Galaxy Tab, if you have one, to act as a secondary monitor. And the Samsung Gallery app is also bundled and includes some of the AI-based editing features that you'll find in the latest Galaxy phones, like the Object Eraser here. And notification and clipboard contents can also be shared between phone and PC, another useful feature that brings Samsung's experience in line with what you get out of continuity on a Mac and an iPhone. Same deal with Quick Share, which is Samsung's version of AirDrop. So you don't need to be fully 110% bought into the Galaxy ecosystem to enjoy these features, but at least having a Galaxy phone to pair it with is definitely going to make for an enhanced experience. So overall, I think Samsung has done a good job juggling the power and performance constraints of x86 with a high-end dedicated GPU into a laptop that still serves as a reasonably portable powerhouse. Obviously, coming from editing on a MacBook Pro, what I miss is the greater efficiency of Apple Silicon, which means I can more confidently edit on battery with less noise and heat. Funnily enough though, what I probably miss just as much is the haptic feedback and responsiveness of the trackpad in that Mac in Adobe apps on macOS. Although touch input works really great in a lot of other Windows apps, that's part of my personal workflow that's still a little bit lacking in the Windows world. But I think if you're looking for a professional workstation with a ton of power for the kind of tasks where you need a big beefy GPU, this is a really great option. The gold standard in performance per watt is still the MacBook Pro. This machine, or anything based on the current Intel hardware, isn't going to change that. But if you want or need to live on Windows, where you have the vast world of PC gaming available to you and the additional control and customization provided by the Microsoft ecosystem, this is a fantastic Pro laptop to consider. That's it for now. Stay tuned and subscribe for more Pro, notebook and Windows coverage coming soon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.